Good. So next one is grounding and connection are possible. And it was really cool because we've already connected with this, is that I'm freaking out and now I'm learning that my body could be this access point for breath, for calming down. And eventually, for me, as I practiced my yoga, my body became this place where I felt really at home. Like I said, I'll come home from a trip and practice yoga and I miss being with myself, like being connected to my body. So I feel at home here with a hand on my chest, a hand on my belly, and breathing. Like this feels safe and at home. And that takes practice, but once like you have that, no one can take, like you could have nothing and you have that. What a gift, right? And we all have that. Some lines of thinking consider that, I don't know many that don't think this, that really everything we need is within us. And whatever your religion or your beliefs, that like we are all, right? Like essentially these very beautiful beings, and everything we need for connection is within us. And so just getting to that physical self. So the primary goal, this is from research, of trauma-sensitive yoga is to provide students a guided, structured practice that allows them to reconnect and eventually feel safe in their own bodies. So that's what we want to do, is be safe right in there. So that's what we're doing. And for the physical practice, again, this one, like the other one, is I work toward presence. This works toward like really getting them in their bodies, so all of the physical cues work, and then having them use the connections to down-regulate. So I'm going to feel my feet to calm down. So we add this step. So you guys got all that where we went to I choose. And what could we choose? To breathe deeply, slow my heart, look carefully at what's triggering or upsetting me, and select a behavior that will be safe for me and other people. So I can choose to focus on the present moment. I can choose to be here in my body, feel my legs. And so for the kids, we made this principle really specific. Like I feel my feet, my hands, my body to steady my feelings. So just making it really clear to them that that's what we're talking about. So in the postures, we bring people right to their true north alignment, right to presence. In the mindful practice, a walking meditation, where you're really walking, so really almost like being in your life, walking through and being present. And we do that in the Mindful Therapist here at UB, a walking meditation. And then in your informal practice, thinking about when am I like really using my body to calm down. So when I was late for yoga class, I softened, I let go, and then I felt the steering wheel. I actually put on a song, and I used the sounds and the music, right? So my sensory, through my ears to really relax and calm down and have fun. So change like this takes many repetitions. So anywhere from 100 to 1,000 repetitions. And that's why we call it like well-being practice, mind-body practice. That you have to practice a lot. It didn't just suddenly happen for us to disconnect, and it's not going to suddenly happen to reconnect. So lots of practice. So our body can work toward becoming this place of self. And I would say I practiced for sure for at least 2 years steady to feel like a solid anchor in my body. And that may be atypical. Like that might be longer than for a lot of people. But I had put my body through a lot. I was a Division I swimmer. I spent a lot of time checking out of my body, pushing myself really hard. And so the idea of my body being a nice place to be was a foreign concept to me. I grew up in a military family. Discipline, don't cry, work hard, right? So it was just foreign, and that just took me a long time. Probably I'm up at the 1,000 repetitions person. For assisting and supporting students, really getting them physical. So pushing your foot into the mat, reaching and being very concrete and specific with what you're saying, modeling and connecting. And here the special note is that we shouldn't say this is how it shouldn't say. You don't want to say it should feel like this. This should feel like that. Actually put people more in inquiry. Like, you know, how are you feeling? Like, what are you noticing, right? Instead of telling them how they should feel. Good. 7, so we're getting close. And these last ones I can go through pretty quickly. So creating the conditions for safety and growth. So we already went over the comfort zone, and you're creating that. So here, yoga teachers made an effort to help participants feel empowered and in control of their own healing. Participants, in turn, said that they found the program helpful because they felt in control of their bodies and felt safe to participate or decline from participating. So that choice was there, just like my participant that could leave. So you want to really get people to think like there's always a choice. Like I have a dysfunctional TV show I watch, Suits. And it's a ridiculous show about privileged lawyers, I think in New York City. But it's actually a central tenet of the show is that you always have a choice, right? And so the young lawyer is learning from his mentor that you always, even when you think you're backed into an ethical whatever corner, that you always have a choice, right? So getting there. And that, do you notice it's I can create? So it's not that I go up to Stacy and I'm like, you know, you need to make me feel safe and you need to be, right? That's not her job to make me feel safe. But I could say, you know what, I get really anxious when there's a loud noise and I feel really safe around you. If you hear a loud noise, I'm going to be looking for you. I'm going to grab your hand. Is that cool? And she might be like, totally. Or like, no, you're strange. Right? And then I'll ask the next person, Shanice, is it cool if I grab your hand? And she's just going to be like, yes. Although Stacy would say yes too, right? And so Kelly, right? Megan, right? So it's, but that's on me to connect out here, right? To find the friends that are safe. And I don't like secretly hope someone notices that I'm falling apart. I like reach out and that's on me to do that. Does that make sense? Or the teacher, and I have students come up, I had this injury, I had this happen, just so you know. And they tell me when someone came up to me in class the other day, she had a patch, like really severe diabetes, and she goes, I just want you to know, like if I fall down in class. But she was creating the conditions for her own safety by reaching out to me. Does that make sense? It's easy like that. All right, good. So you 100% want to be safe. However, you want to bring in what feels like risk. So you want to like create safety and for people to experiment with how I can move a little bit out of my comfort zone toward where I'm feeling a little unsafe, but the truth is I'm fine and I'm just getting uncomfortable. And then I'm going to work on creating the conditions where I can do that. I might practice always by my best friend. And then I'm like, you know what? You stay here. I'm going to practice over here today, right? Or this person that always sat against the wall does her shavasana in the middle of the room. Or maybe a little away from the wall, right? But always working on that shift. So meditation would be really bringing that into the meditation. Like where is a safe place, and that it's someplace where I can go to whenever I feel anxious. So here is the safe place meditation. For me, it's at the lake, and helping people create that safe place. Sometimes an activity you can do is like journaling, have an imaginary place. Sometimes people that have been through really horrible childhood and lives don't have a safe place. So they can make an imaginary place that feels safe, right? So we don't want to go with the assumption of like, you got a safe place, right? And then somebody grew up in, Syria and there was no safe place, and that's why they're in a refugee camp, right? So what would a safe place feel like? How can we build it? Let's write it in the journal, and now we can meditate about it, right? Same with safe relationships. They might not know what that's like. So you want to kind of not assume it's there and help them create the idea of it so they can meditate on that. And then informal, noticing comfort zone, safety zone, and how you're working on that. And then your inquiry is, what does each of these zones feel like? Is it possible for me to move my comfort zone, kind of move where I think my safety zone is, and getting a sense of what that feels like in my body? Good. So assistant support is, I talked about that a lot though, but example would be using language that invites rather than demands. So when you feel ready, when it feels good, perhaps, maybe, consider, reflect, wonder, right? They are kind of inviting but not demanding, right? And then special notes, that we have to respect what really does feel unsafe for people and put them in power rather than demand. Good. Good. So 8, 9, 10, we're really almost there. So here is structure and change. Trauma-sensitive yoga practice can provide a structure approach that helps foster our internal sense of safety, personal agency or personal control, and a choice that cultivates our capacity for self-awareness and self-regulation. So what I mean is that structure is it keeps staying the same. Always do what I always do, which is a lot like comfort zone, but it can be like even rigid structure. Like I always go with this person, I always do this, I always practice in this order. And then change, right, would be I'm going to do everything different. And what can happen is sometimes we kind of break free and we change so much that we crash and burn. Like sometimes somebody gets sober and then they aren't careful enough with how much they expose themselves to in their recovery, right? And so you would want to keep structure and gradually change things up so that you don't have a relapse, right? But it's like, I'm sober and I'm going to do speaking engagements all over the place and tell everyone how I'm sober. And you've never done speaking engagements before. And that's a lot of stress. And the traveling's stressful, right? And before you know it, you're relapsing and now you're pretending that you're not relapsed and you're doing speaking engagements everywhere. So it's really finding a balance. Or I'm going to go to every class, every yoga class every day. Or maybe it's like maybe twice a week at first, getting used to being in your body. So that idea of your structure that helps you feel safe and change that helps you grow, you want to balance that. And I really argue in keeping in a lot of the structure. So if one thing that really helps you is you always have your water bottle and you drink your water and keep that, right? How about if you're going to go through a lot of change in addressing your trauma, that you keep going to bed at 9 o'clock or 9:30 or 10, right? That you're going to really work on your trauma. So you're going to, how about keep watching your same favorite TV show every Tuesday, right? So you keep a balance in there. Does that make sense? Okay. So you can do this in, we call it stira and sukha. I've been teaching to this in class. So stira is the firmness and sukha is the easiness. So firmness, I almost think like steering wheel. And sukha is letting go. So, and Megan, you talked about this a little bit too in your talk, but the idea of like that kind of the letting things go too much and the structure, that we really want a balance of both. So no, don't let go of the steering wheel, but you don't have to hold on to it as tight as I was trying to get to, right? Like that you could maybe even let someone drive while you take a nap or something. Okay, so in physical practice, you can mix up the poses, do things a little different. I do something really simple. I'll say like lock your thumbs for one warrior one. And then on the other side, do it on the other side. I do this often, and people are like, oh, like you want to lock your thumbs this way but not this way? You could put on your coat with a different arm. You'll hate it. Tie your shoe the other way. This is just to show you how much we can either get too stuck in our routine and not. And then if I always do always, I'm just constantly agitated and it's too much, right? Always changing everything, and then we just crash and burn and go right back to our old routine, right? Because it was just too much, so we have to balance it. So the mindful practice, you can do shifts in breathing while you're doing the mindful thinking. You can have people reflect on routine or not routine. In your informal mindful practice, just noticing if you keep a routine in your day, what that feels like. And then in your inquiry, just being an inquiry about what does it feel like. What if I told you things could never change? That would feel scary, right? Or if I said everything has to change every day, we wouldn't want that. Like it really is this balance. And then assisting and supporting. You tell people what's coming up in class. Next, if people have taken my yoga class, I do this. I'll go next. We're going to do, so you can get your head around it, this is going to be different, and we're going to do these 3 things. And I do what I say, right? So that people are going to try new things, but they have a sense of structure around it. Good. Almost there. So special notes, too many changes, too many choices can be overwhelming. So you really, like, and when I have people try, like if we do a pose called 8-angle pose, I will almost do the entire rest of the class exactly traditional, classic way. And people, I have a bunch of things I do in every single class, no matter what. And some things I change up because it feels good to feel safe in your routine. And it feels good to try something new. But just routine all the time is boring and stagnant, and trying something new all the time is overwhelming, right? So we're looking for a balance. So last two, really quickly, my path, your path. So here, I'm going to go right to it. Honoring your individual path of recovery and growth, and they're all different. So each path to healing and growth is unique. And just like every single trauma can't be compared, like you can say, well, I got in a car accident. Well, I lost a family member. Well, they're just not comparable because it's all of our histories and everything that aggregates, and there's no way of assessing. My boyfriend cheated on me. My father beat me up. Like, these things are just not, they're just, and what kind of comparison game is that? It's a game where we all lose. Because if you're hurting, and I honor that. And that's all there is, right? That's just all there is. And let's all move and grow together. So we really get to our own growth. Just like you don't compare your forward fold with anybody else's forward fold, you don't compare your own trauma healing to anybody else's. So here, from the researchers, we suggest another layer of reconnection occurs in the process of creating a shared experiences and doing something together, such as trauma. So when we all grow together, no matter what our trauma was, it's a healing process because we're doing it together. Trauma-sensitive yoga is a way to make peace with your body, to learn through experience, and your body can be effective again to reclaim your body as your own. So together, we reclaim our bodies. So in the physical practice, we do a thing called shepherding your gaze, or drishti. So you're in your practice, you're not checking what everybody else is doing. It's just your path, and so you practice that in the yoga. And this attunement of doing it together and being in our own practice, it really helps you, like even being in class, not worrying about everybody else's grade. Like you're in yoga, not worrying about their yoga. So here, the meditation is on being present in your own path when you're ready. And really even meditating on what your path might look like, giving it a physical identity. Is it dirt? Is it brick? Where are you headed? And then informal, just noticing your own path, and if you're comparing it to other people. Oh, my microphone. An inquiry, what does it feel like when your path is judged by others? You're not recovering fast enough, you're recovering too fast. So what would feel best in the support from others? And then being careful as teachers that overpraising can be triggering for people. You're doing so great. That it stops feeling like your own. And like, what if I'm not doing great? And yeah, I haven't drank in like 3 months, but like now I'm feeling like you're watching, right? And that stops being mine. Like I did a big change in my life many years ago, and I didn't tell anyone. Didn't tell anyone. Because I didn't want them to get tangled up in it. So I kept it a secret for like 3 years probably, before I like told 1 or 2 people that it was something that I was working on. But in the past, I had done grand announcements and blah, blah, blah. And then, you know, it's almost like you break up with your boyfriend. Everybody's like, good, he was a jerk, but then you have to secretly get back together with him, right? I've done that too, right? So it's like, everybody's like, oh, God. I'm like, pick me up, like, down the street so no one sees me. Right? Like, letting it be your own path and then not getting over-involved in other people's recovery. Like, kind of letting it be theirs. And then the last one that I love a lot is that there's more than not having symptoms, that there's thriving. So I work toward the possibility of effectiveness and growth in my life, that I'm not just a dog that's going to lay in the cage. I'm even going to get out of the cage onto the non-shocking floor, and better, I'm going to get out of the cage altogether and run in the field. Like just because I've been hurt or sick or symptomatic or depressed or anxious or PTSD or in a bad relationship or involved with drugs or alcohol, I don't have to just languish and just be not using, I could be flourishing, and it's totally possible for me. It's not expected, and I don't have a demand list, but I could start having little things on my wish list, right? Like I wouldn't mind going to Europe. I wouldn't mind falling in love. I wouldn't mind, right? And then maybe from I wouldn't mind to like, I think I'd like to fall in love. I think that's possible for me, right? I would love to go to Europe. I would like to stand under the Eiffel Tower. How could I, right? I would love to be able to hold hands with someone and not sweat. I would like to kiss someone without being afraid and sober, right? These are things that people work toward that are beautiful, right? I want to hold my child and not be afraid. So, and more than just not having symptoms, right? So that's the last one. And then we work toward that in class. So I can create, and for kids, it's I can create my own path of possibility. Like what could be possible for me? So the lessons learned through trauma-sensitive yoga can translate to a more generalized acceptance and trust in one's own self, in possibility in one's own life. And so in the physical practice, you look at what you've done, like you never thought you could do crow, and then you can do crow, and then you think, gosh, what else could I do, right? For me, it was like headstand. What else could I do, right? Like if I could do this, and I didn't even start till I was trying till I was 45, shoot, what else, right? So you can act with purpose and change the way your body feels right now. Yoga forms offer opportunities to purposefully create different things in your own life. And so this is formal and informal. Reflection gets about that, like what's possible. So you meditate on that. Inquiry. How could you use all of these tools to change your life? Assisting and supporting. Like really asking people, okay, now we've gone through all this, and if you were to do this as a whole program, you're 10, 11 weeks in, like what's possible for you now? Let me work together and ask about this. So how can I support? I've never felt this feeling of possibility before. Like how can I support you in feeling that? And then taking people back through the whole thing. So I'm worth the effort. My breath is my most powerful tool. I work toward presence in my body, and I feel so I can heal. Those are the basics. Do you feel that now? And then here, emotion regulation, I always can go back to those for my anchor. And then I have choice in the moment. I can ground and connect through my physical self. Create conditions for safety and growth. That's on me. And a balance between how fast it goes, my structure and the challenge. And then we each have our own path, and that my path can go beyond just recovery. It can go toward possibility. And that's every single bit of trauma research in all of the books in 10 principles. So good. That's it.